encounter.
Good knowledge.
It feels very
Hello and welcome to the Unwanted Opinion podcast, the show in which me and my friends give our unwanted opinion on all things film. My name is Lewis, and I'm joined today with Gonzalo.
Hey!
Hey! Yes, and because there's no visuals on the show, Gonzalo just lifted up a heart-shaped box of chocolates,
Yes.
Because on today's show, in, the moods of Valentine's Day and obviously all that romantic nonsense, we're going to be talking about romantic films. Some of our favourites in the genre as a whole, we're going to get right into it. As well as some of our least favourites.
Oh, yes.
We'll definitely mention some of them. And we'll also have a review for Sarah Polley's latest and Oscar-nominated Woman Talking at the end of the show as well. So, that will be on today's episode.
Yes.
But, Gonzalo, just because it's you and me, let's just get right into
Let's get right into this.
The romance genre is a very, very, should I say, a mixed box of chocolates in terms of, some of the quality you get and some of the ones you like and
You
really
got
don't
some
like.
brilliant dark chocolate and some very shitty, poorly made milk chocolate with orange on the inside. Not a big fan of those.
You're not a fan of orange chocolate?
Not a big fan of those, especially when they're poorly made.
No. I don't like...
What's your least...
I don't really like...
What's your least favorite type of chocolate?
Strawberry flavoured chocolate.
Strawberry
I don't really... Strawberries in themselves are... I think they're fine. They're a decent fruit. I'll eat them, whatever. But strawberry flavoured things, I really don't like. There's something about it that just feels so like... I don't know. It's like overly sweet and weird.
I completely understand. It also never tastes like strawberry does. It's a completely different thing, like strawberry flavor stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm not the biggest fan of strawberries. They're okay. That's a fruit. I like wild strawberries. They're really tiny ones.
That's a controversial.
That's a controversial. Oh,
strawberries.
damn. Strawberries. They're okay. They're okay. I prefer raspberries.
Yeah, me
raspberries
too.
are amazing.
Raspberries
the texture, the taste is just, they're brilliant. Blackberries.
Look, we're not reviewing fruits today. Right. Sorry, romance genre. What were you saying, Gonzalo?
Yes,
about the
romance genre. It's a weird one, honestly. It's one of those things where the as human beings, the act of loving someone and caring for other people, it's a very human thing. So like romance in and of itself, not just romantically, but like just the idea of like love in general, is a thing that we find in a lot of different movies.
Yeah, it's the most relatable aspect to. I mean, romance in film is genuinely there's always a romance subplot in the majority of films. There's always going to be a love relationship somewhere, and it's definitely one of the most relatable things humans can have with a character.
It can be used for a lot of different things. It can be used to add like humanity to a character by giving them like a loved one. You already feel like worse or better about their fate, Like if you have a movie, someone gets killed and then you reveal that they had a family, loved ones, children, stuff like that. You're like, holy shit, now I give a shit. So it's like a very good thing to use to like humanize characters a bit more. And it's also lazily used a lot. I think you would agree.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The romantic subplots in like non-romantic movies, it's one of our least favorite tropes. The way they add on two-dimensional female characters for the male protagonist to gain at the end as like a prize. Like, we don't like that shit. But if you count that as romantic, then basically there's very few films that don't have romance in them. But
or some sort of object of attraction.
Exactly. But today I think we're going to try to focus on stories that are about love, that are like
so purely looking at those romantic relationships instead of just being a aspect of a bigger film.
Exactly. I think that's what we're going with, because again, like if we're just talking about movies that feature love, like that's just in the words of my dad, Interstellar is a movie about how love transcends time and space. So like we could talk about a lot of different genres. So we're going to try to focus on like stories that are about love. So Lewis, do you want to start this time just to switch things around?
I just on the show I've actually recommended two of my favourite romantic films ever before, and that is 2019's A Portrait of a Lady on Fire, Celine Sciamma's masterpiece. It's timeless in its aesthetic and its look, and it's just a beautiful period piece as well. Like, if you're just someone who just admires great cinematography, set and production design, and costume design, it's beautiful to look at. But the romance, and I remember when we talked about it when me and Kyle did our recommendations episode, where we just did purely recommendations. So it's just one of my favorite films ever. The way they utilize non-verbal attraction and just the gaze, because it's two female lovers, and it's all about the gaze and how they're just falling in love with each other through looks, and it's beautiful. I love that film so much. If you have not seen it, check it out. I think it's on Mubi.
Yeah,
not too sure. I mean, I've got it. And Before Sunrise and the whole Before trilogy.
Yes, the whole trilogy of the Before movies.
Fantastic. It's just also, if you're interested in, writing stories or creating character relationships, and maybe you struggle to write character dialogue and stuff like that, then those films are absolutely, it's all dialogue based.
See,
it's just two people talking, as well as, it's well directed and edited, of course.
It's curious because you've talked about your two all-time favorite movies about love, basically, and one of them is very much a non-verbal kind of love, where the whole idea is trying to show the attraction rather than explicitly talk about it, and the other three movies are very much about dialogue, but in a way where the love isn't really portrayed within the dialogue, but more the subtext of the dialogue. And I think that's a key to romantic movies. It's not just about what you say; it's about how it's said and all the implications and all that stuff. It's really what conveys that,
and all the playfulness behind, and all the playfulness and jokiness in it. And also, that's a great moment in that beginning of Before Sunrise is that, well, at the point in the film, there's that whole juxtaposition. The whole thing's talking, but then she mentions that she was attracted to him when they looked at each other on the train at the very beginning of the film before they even spoke. So there's that whole thing about looking in the gaze and things like that. But also, her as well. I mean, I talked you when we did the movie talk days in the old radio station.
Which is
very much
exactly the opposite, because the only way this relationship, this relationship exists is completely verbally.
That's obviously. Joaquin Phoenix starring Scarlett Johansson voice, where she plays an AI and a man falls in love with an AI. I used to tell people the plot to that film. People are like, that's really creepy and weird. But whenever anyone sees it, they always fall in love with it, because it's just impossible not to fall in love with it. But I'm actually going non-21st century picks today, because I did a whole video, I did a whole TikTok on the best of the 21st century, so I'm not going there today, and I'm beginning with an absolute classic, which everyone needs to see, which I actually only saw recently, and that's When Harry Met Sally, the Rob Reiner film, written by Nora Ephron, who actually, this was an Oscar-nominated screenplay, and you can see why.
Nora Ephron is...
When Harry Met Sally?
Okay, so I still, I think we talked about this movie before, and I've mentioned that I had yet to see it, and it's been recommended to me a lot. And ever since, I've been desperately trying to watch it with my girlfriend. And I've been trying to watch it, and I still haven't had the time. And it's a movie that she's a huge fan of, and I don't want to watch without sharing it with her. So I still haven't seen When Harry Met Sally. Even though, again, it's one of the movies that the most amount of people have ever recommended I watch. I think no one's recommended me to watch a movie as much as people have recommended When Harry Met Sally.
Because you'd really like When Harry Met Sally. If you like rom-coms, this is a quintessential important pick. But yeah, the whole plot of When Harry Met Sally is way back in it begins in 1977, and you have Harry, who's at college and is dating this girl. And then just wants to is driving from, I think, Chicago to New York, and her friend is driving him, right? So it's a whole little road trip at the start and how they meet. And they actually don't really get along to begin with, It's
I've heard it's the example of how to do enemies to lovers kind of plot correctly. Because that's a very, very overused trope that's not...
What I really like about the way it's written is that it's not it's not written as in they're complete polar opposites, as in, oh, I really hate him and I really hate her. It's more just they tried to hit it off, they just tried to talk and
I don't like your vibe,
a banter through the thing. But that's the thing, it's just I'm just not really you're not really that cool. And then she believes she tried to make a pass at him and all that stuff. And then so it starts in 1997, then you jump 5 years and they meet again on an airplane this time. And obviously they're in different life circumstances at this point, and then they meet again a few years later, and then finally the main plot takes place in like what was the present day of 1989 when this was made. And yeah, and at that point it's just so interesting to see from that starting point, the whole structure of it. You within 20 minutes you already get these characters who've already gone on a little mini arc of where they were at the beginning of the film, these 20 minutes, to then where they are in the present day and the relationships they've been on, the people they've met, and then how they've sort of matured. And then they meet each other again and they just decide to be friends, and then they just really love their company and the people they are at that point in time. And then, of course, feelings get involved.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a rom-com. You know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But, yeah. And it's also... The whole film has also got these little... vignettes. The full film opens with like a little talking heads of this old couple of how they met, and then that's like there's like 4 of them in the film, and it's like before they kind of jump between a different time jump, it's like they'll always have a little talking head moment of how these people met.
Also, like a little interviews of like people.
Yes, little interviews with these old people
that like sprinkled around. Oh, that's interesting. I like that.
And it's just great because it's even just taken in isolation, they're just these little cute stories of different meet cutes. How these relationships all started and how all of them are unique and different in their own right. And then, of course, you have when Harry Met Sally in the film, sort of, well, won't spoil the way it ends, but you can kind of guess.
It's interesting because like the idea of people that end up together, like the idea of like how they meet, it's always such a like weird and unique. I always try to ask people that whenever I like meet people that are a couple or people that are like have been married for a while, because they have such interesting stories, and you do get like some weird stuff like that. Like my parents, for example, they met on a plane, in like a very rom-com way. Like my dad was with his girlfriend at the time. My mother was my mother was with her friend, and my dad pushed his like seat back onto my mom, who tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Sorry, sir, could you push it to the front? You're bothering me right now." And like that like weird thing got them to talking and stuff. And it wasn't until like a lot later that like my dad broke up with his girlfriend and stuff, and they ended up finding themselves again, kind of thing. So like, yeah, it was like a
very When Harry Met Sally.
Like it's very kind of like rom-com-y kind of thing, and like it's fascinating because when you meet people and talk about this thing, and especially like it's such an easy way to find the story within real life, you know.
Yeah.
Like
absolutely.
It gives you that fascinating thing because that's what we look for when we watch movies. We look for that like neat narrative and that neat little bow. And when you're looking back, you can find all those things that like pushed you to the place that you were in order to actually have that connection. So I do feel that like that's a fascinating thing to explore in a movie. Honestly, it sounds really fun.
I mean, that is actually a perfect thing, like a relation to When Harry Met Sally, is that. I mean, yeah, it's got this little meet cute thing like every rom-com, but it feels very human. It's also just a very natural film. Like the chemistry between Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan is so believable. Like it's one of these things where you can have any 2 stars in the world and you can put them together, and there's no science behind it. They either will or won't have screen chemistry, and it's really really hard to find believable ones.
100%.
This is like just some of the best. Like, and it's. Just their dynamic, the way they bounce off each other, and the comedy as well. It's really, really funny. It's aged so well. Like you can look at old comedies and perhaps they don't age well, or perhaps they're problematic in any sense.
Especially rom-coms.
It's aged so well. And actually, that's a great also facet of Harry's character. Is that he is a little misogynistic at the start. Like I'm saying, there is a little mini arc. He is a little bit unlikable in a sense. He has these sort of beliefs, about men and women can never be friends because men will always want to sleep with them, and that's sort of his belief. And then just how he changes to the point when the real story begins is really interesting to see. And also, this doesn't get enough credit. The film actually looks gorgeous. It looks so scenic and nice. I mean, there's this whole scene where it's autumn in Central Park and just, leaves have fallen, and the way they frame the shot is just so nice. It looks so just crisp and clear. And then there's this bit in the museum, this massive wide shot, and then there's just like and their silhouettes because it's daylight outside with these grand windows. and it just I'm like this is brilliant. This is so every aspect of it is so well produced and made, and
That's a like,
yeah, it's just really hard to resist when Harry
yeah.
Met Sally. It's just it's people will
Hmm.
always recommend it, and it always kind of is timeless, and it's
Hmm.
one of those.
Hmm.
You see that like a lot of films, like we talked about Spielberg, people be like, oh yeah, this is a classic, or this is a classic,
Hmm.
and you sort of roll your eyes like, yeah, yeah, it's good. And when Harry Met Sally is like, yeah, it's really good. Like you need
Yeah.
to see it
I can't
if you
wait.
haven't.
Honestly, I can't
Mhm,
wait. Once I watch it, we'll have
mhm.
to do a whole episode on why
Yeah,
Gonzalo really liked When
yeah.
Harry Met Sally.
Oh. But
Yeah.
and that's what I mean. It's just it
Mm.
all comes down to that chemistry between Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan, and
It's
it's perfect. It's pitch
it's
perfect.
interesting to me what you said about like the cinematography of it because I
Hmm.
feel like we're so used, especially in the romantic comedy genre, after
Hmm.
we had like really big hits like When Harry Met Sally, which like really
Yep.
popularized this genre with the public, we started getting like basically bargain bin versions of it, you
Mm.
know? Like we
Yeah, yeah.
started to getting a lot of like yeah, vending machine movies where like it's barely written, it's barely acted, it's barely directed, everything is lit like it's a sitcom or something.
Hmm.
It's yeah, it's really interesting because we're so used to seeing like such poor filmmaking when it comes to
Hmm.
not even like bad filmmaking, not bad in a way that's
Yeah,
interesting, just like boring and bland. Like
yeah,
there's
yeah.
so many
Uh-huh.
different like rom-coms that I've sat through where like I
Hmm.
wondered if there was a director even on set that day or they just fell asleep while everyone else did the work, you know?
Yeah.
'Cause yeah, they're just like the shots say nothing, the composition say nothing, like the way the characters are framed, like it's competent. There's nothing
Hmm.
actively wrong about the editing or the lighting or the,
Yeah, yeah,
but it's just like bland in such an inspired way when you
yeah.
have
Hmm.
moments of conflict where they could be like done in any interesting way using camera angles or lighting or even just the way the characters are placed on the scene in an interesting way you end up
Hmm.
just having a two shot or an over the shoulder in the most boring way possible, you know? And
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
interesting. It's like we're so used to that that it seems surprising
Hmm.
whenever we watch a
Yeah.
rom-com that
Yeah.
has that kind of like style of
Yeah.
filmmaking, you know?
I think that's the thing. I mean, the film uses space very interestingly.
Hmm.
Like things. I mean, it's set in New York City. It's
Hmm.
goddamn massive. I think that's kind of the point.
Yeah.
It's like you put these two characters and they seem small in this massive space and obviously small within this massive city, but
Hmm.
that's kind of the point. It's like they've found the perfect like partner for themselves
Yeah.
within the massive
Yeah, I
massive
mean they
space
meet
that is New
three
York City.
times, which what are the odds of
Yeah.
that?
Hmm.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's a very conscious effort
Hmm.
for the cinematography of the film. But yeah, that would be my first pick. What are
Fantastic.
you going to go for then?
Well, just to follow up and go for another
Hmm.
rom-com, one that you apparently haven't watched, which I definitely urge you to watch. Which is funny because
Yes, I know.
this is a very British rom-com,
Hmm.
and one I really really like, and that's Notting Hill. Yeah.
Notting Hill. Yeah,
So
I was literally scrolling through Netflix last night
yeah,
with my girlfriend,
yeah.
and I was just like, "What about that?" Okay,
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is a very very odd rom-com as well, a very classic one. A lot of people
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
watching it. It's made some of the places where the movie takes place kind of famous in that sense, you know?
Yeah, it made them really expensive. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's just a really like lovely movie, I would describe it. It's fun
Uh-huh.
and dumb in the best of ways.
Hmm.
And like you have in the best rom-coms, there's like scenes that if you take them completely out of the movie, that you wouldn't really lose anything but a little chuckle. But
Hmm.
you know, like it really adds to the charm of it. It was like I think it's a 1999 movie, like literally turn of the century kind of movie. Let me
Yeah.
actually check this.
Let me check.
Yes, 1999. Yes, okay, yeah, 1999. Yeah, so turn of the century kind of movie. This would not have made your list then, sadly.
No, no, it wouldn't have. No, that's a shame. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but you can also see a lot of like themes and like stuff that if well, like especially when it comes to the some of like the wardrobe choices of some of the characters and
Hmm.
stuff that very much lean into that early 2000s emerging fashion and stuff. It's interesting. It's a very fun movie. Basically, the plot follows. This guy, he's played by what's
Hugh
his name?
Grant.
Hugh Grant. Thank you. I'm so terrible with actors' names.
Oh no,
Do you
I've not
know?
seen the film. I just know it's Hugh Grant,
Do you
and
know I had like full conversations with my girlfriend where I'm trying to talk about an actor and then I just start naming movies that they're in
mhm.
until she gets it because
Until she gets it.
she
Yeah,
hasn't
yeah,
seen any of
yeah.
those movies I just named, but she ends up getting it, you know?
Yeah,
I'm
Julia Roberts
so bad with
still.
that. But yeah, so yeah, no, Hugh Grant, basically, we follow him. He's this guy who works in a little bookshop in Notting Hill in London,
Of
and it's
course, it's a bookshop.
yeah,
Oh, it's gotta be nice there.
it's a
It's gotta be cutesy.
yes, but that's the thing. It's really funny because it's not a normal bookshop. It's a travel
Mhm.
bookshop that sells travel books exclusively, and they're very shitty and
Okay.
very silly. And so like that's the thing with this movie. It does very corny shit, and then it puts like a really fun twist on it. You know, that's the thing I
Mhm.
found. Like you have very corny scenes, and then they kind of and it adds this tinge of realism in a way
Okay.
that it makes it relatable. Like they're having like
Mhm.
the typical dinner where like she meets all his friends and stuff, but like they're all fucking weirdos, and it's really
Yeah.
really fun. Like she's got like she well, I'll get to the plot. Then I get sidetracked. So basically, he has this bookshop. He's just going through life. He's okay. The bookshop's struggling, but he's not really happy or sad. He's just drifting.
Classic. The
And
bookshop's always struggling.
yeah, and this woman comes into the bookshop at some point, and he seems to recognize her, and he turns out it's this famous American actress that he's seen in some movies. And right while she's walking in, this bloke comes in and tries to steal a book and by stuffing it down his trousers. And he stops him in a very fun way, very charming, very Hugh Granty, and her who's played by give me a second.
Julia Roberts.
Julia Roberts. Thank you.
I already said her name.
Oh, you already did. Okay, I'm great at this.
Yeah.
So yeah, she's Julia Roberts, and she basically plays Julia Roberts. Let's be honest here,
Yeah.
because she's
Okay.
this
Mhm.
fantastic American actress trying to like do more serious movies, who's like more into
Mhm.
like doing a lot of rom-coms and shit. So yeah, basically, he charms her a little bit. She buys a book and she leaves, and they have a really nice interaction. And that's pretty much it until he gets out of the bookshop, is grabbing coffee and slams right into her and gets coffee all over her. He struggles for a second. He's like, "Oh my God, my house is literally right over here. Here, you can. I'll give you something to change into and stuff." He feels
Mhm.
very sorry. She comes in, she changes, but it's really interesting because the whole dynamic here is that he knows who she is. He
Mhm.
knows who she is.
Oh
And
yeah.
she's like, because it doesn't play that bullshit thing that you've seen in a lot of like other badly made rom-coms. So it's like, oh, I'm the one person in the world who doesn't know who you are,
Yeah. Who
but
doesn't
I,
know you? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 It's not that bullshit. Like he knows exactly
Uh,
who she is, and he's like
mhm.
completely in awe of everything that's happening.
Mhm.
And he's still very nice and charming and kind of clumsy in a very charming way like he is and stuff, and he has this moment with her and it like feels amazing and stuff. And then like somehow this connection continues and he ends up going to see her when she's back in town and stuff, and like it feels very much like he's floating out of his little small world into her gigantic, like
Yeah.
just her space. He's in awe of her, and she's this wonderful person. And he's like, I don't like, how come I am able to be with someone as amazing as you, kind of thing. And it's really interesting
Yeah.
because it plays it in a very grounded way. It's not like this, oh my God, I'm dating a superstar. Let's go do amazing
Yeah.
things and walk on limos and shit. Like,
Not like last year's "Marry Me," where
yes,
that was the whole
exactly.
thing.
The
Where it's like
opposite of
Owen Wilson
marriage.
didn't know who Jennifer Lopez was, and he's just like, oh, okay, and then
Exactly,
they get
exactly.
married, and let's
Very
do all
much the
this
opposite. And it's very
celebrity
subtle
stuff.
and
Yeah.
it's very quiet, even though it's supposed to be this movie about this guy meeting this grandiose star and stuff. It's got great humor. There's my favorite character in the whole movie is his roommate, played by Reese Ifans, I think is how you pronounce that. He's the lizard in
Yeah.
Amazing Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Yes, he's got a t-shirt that says "God up sex" in the back, and he's hilarious. Uh, it's really fun. It's very British. It has some really great moments where like they get together to go out to watch a movie, and he can't find his glasses, so instead he takes his scuba goggles because they're also like like he had them made special so he could actually see through them.
Uh,
So he watches this whole movie through school goggles and stuff, and it's like it's got stuff like that. There's really good scenes with his friends. His sister is fucking riot, and she's great. Um, there's like he has this friend who's in a wheelchair who she had an accident. They kind of had a fling when they were younger, but she's now married to another one of his friends. But they have a very kind of like good relationship where like obviously they like
okay,
had
yeah.
a thing together and stuff, but it's not like they still have it or they resentment. Like they
Hmm.
feel very much like
Wait, so like
family.
they had history, and then it's
Yeah, and he's
no,
married
you
to
don't
one of
anymore.
his
Okay.
friends, and like you can see there's like every single character in this movie has like a lot of backstory that's just hidden away from you, but you can see it in their
So
performances
it's
and in
like
their dialogue.
the characters, they're not just like, oh sorry, I got a
No.
yawn. They're not
Who's the
just like
sleepy one
paper.
today?
I know.
Yes.
They're not just like, paper within usual cutouts. They're just there in
Yes,
the
no,
background. Like
like
each character is sort of they're rich with backstory and
yes, you could make
stuff
like a
like that.
whole movie about each one of these characters.
Wow.
There's his friend who's like in business and he's a big businessman and he does like stocks and
Hmm.
shit, but he's clearly kind of unhappy and also kind of dumb. And he's the only one
Yeah.
who doesn't know she's a film star. So it's really funny
Oh,
when
I
she
see.
comes over, he's like a complete dumbass about it.
Hmm.
And he's like, "Oh, so you work in actresses? That must be hard. Getting job in that? Oof, I don't think it's a very stable thing." Uh, you know,
Yeah.
like it
Yeah.
just it paints the world with a really nice brush. There's obviously this
Mhm.
thing where like he catches her in a room with someone else because she had this ex-husband or ex-boyfriend or something like that who comes visit her, and he's
Of
surprised by
course,
him and
gotta get the
whatever.
expression thing.
Played by fuck me, what's his name?
You should. Why'd you even bother? Why'd you even bother saying
Honestly,
played by?
honestly, I got yeah. I don't know why I do it to myself. One second. Da, 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 da. Ha, 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 ha. He's barely in this fucking movie. Okay, he's not even in the
You
cast
just didn't
credits.
even have to say it.
The
Played
guy
by
who
some guy.
plays really bad Donald Trump in SNL. He's
Alec
going to
Baldwin.
jail. Yeah, he's going to jail for shooting someone. Yeah, that
He's
guy.
not going to jail. He's not actually going to
Oh,
jail. No,
okay, he was about
he's
to. I
fine.
don't know.
Actually, they're gonna carry on making that film.
What the fuck, man?
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
what I found. That's what I
Hollywood.
found out. They're making that film.
Anyways,
Yeah.
that guy, who's the perfect embodiment to me of an asshole boyfriend. So great casting there. Yeah, and they fall out, and then he comes back again after like a long time passes. He tries to date. He realizes that he can't really like. She basically broke his life because he's gone from like just trying to be normal life to like seeing her everywhere in the movies and the
Yeah.
magazines and stuff. So you have this very earnest kind of thing, and then she basically ends up declaring her love to him in a very touching scene, and he just says no because it's too hard because the last time she
Wow.
kind of broke his heart. He can't stop seeing her everywhere. He can't escape
Mhm.
the shadow of like what they had, and he doesn't think he can take it again. And it's a really
Yeah.
touching scene. And then he ends up going back to his friends. I'm spoiling the whole movie at this point, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
Uh,
That's what I'm getting here. She just got through the whole film.
it's just for me, it's
Yeah.
just a really good, like the last scene where someone runs to the airport to declare their love. It's such a good way of doing it, like subverting the
Okay.
trope and making it very human. Because after that, he tells a story to his friends, and they're all like, "You're a fucking idiot. Let's go get her." You know,
Yeah.
it's really touching. It's really good. It feels very grounded, and again, the cinematography of the film is beautiful. Love the soundtrack, love the acting. Like everyone in this movie just like gives it like 100%, and it
Mhm.
has the right amount of comedy to romance. Like it doesn't feel like a comedy movie with a slapped on romance like a lot of rom-coms do.
Yeah.
It's the opposite. It's a romantic, kind of like tragic at points, very kind of like slow movie that just has comedy and more through like things that happen, and rather than like over the top characters. Like they are
Mhm. Yeah.
weirdos. Like everyone in this movie is fucking weird. Like, but like in a very human way. Like these are people that you would 100% meet, you know? So yeah, no, fantastic. Loved it. It's great. I love how none of the fucking apartments of these people are pristine at all. He lives with a roommate, and everything in his
Is it?
apartment
Is it?
looks
So
like
they don't
shit.
do the thing where it's like Friends, where like
Yes,
Monica and Rachel have
somehow
that flat is worth
from being a line,
millions of dollars
yes, from
in
being
prime
a
real estate in New
line cook
York.
and a freaking
Yeah.
waitress who doesn't even do her
Mhm.
job right. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. It's the opposite of that. It feels very like it feels very grounded in that sense, and that just
Yeah.
adds
Grounded and lived in.
to the feeling because again this movie is about the whole power imbalance between both of them. Like
Hmm.
they are
Yeah.
both clearly attracted to each other, they're both clearly in love, but there is a gigantic wall between them, you know. Not only that, but like he's at the bottom here, like he's looking up at her.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting how they do that because it also shows how like she, even though she's at the top, she doesn't have that much power over
Hmm.
even her life or her image or anything like that. How even though she's the famous superstar and he's a guy who owns a travel bookshop in Notting Hill, like there's still that understanding that even though she could break his heart at any minute, he kind of can't do the same because when it comes to love
Hmm.
and truly like opening yourself up to someone, it doesn't matter how much quote unquote power you have, like you
Yeah.
end up, but it doesn't do it in a way where it's like, oh yeah, but it doesn't matter because they love, so that, like it acknowledges the fact that there is an imbalance there and stuff, and it plays with
Hmm.
it in really subtle and
That's
really
good.
interesting ways. Honestly, I really really liked it. It's really fun, it's really
Hmm.
good, uh very touching. Watch it. Yes, that's it,
Go
that's all
watch
I
it. Yeah, I
have.
really should actually watch it. Like hell. I mean,
Yeah,
I actually the weird thing was I like it was one of those things I was flicking through and
yeah.
what was kind of was about to watch last night, but I didn't watch that. So this could have been we could have been had a more nuanced discussion
Yeah,
here. But I'm sure
I
plenty of people listening would have
Oh,
seen
100%.
Notting
They've
Hill. It's a
probably
very
seen it.
popular film.
Yes.
Hmm.
I think we should do a thing. Whenever we say, "Oh, I should watch
Uh-huh.
this movie," we should write it down, and then at the end of each year, we do an episode where we talk about the movies that we had to watch.
Yeah, yeah,
You
had to
know, that we
watch.
said,
Yeah,
"Oh,
yeah.
I said I should watch it. Have I
Jeez.
seen it
I
yet?"
feel
Let's
like
see.
yeah, I feel
Yeah,
like your list are
my
way
list
bigger than
is
like me or
fucking
girls.
huge. Yes, that's gonna be a Gonzalo
Um,
Talks episode. Uh,
yes.
but yeah,
So
no.
I'll just do some honorable mentions before I get to
Yes,
my other
yes. Go
main
ahead.
one. Uh, on my little 24 best of 21st century thing, I obviously mentioned like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind,
Hmm.
but also Carl. Forgot the name of the film there. In the Mood for Love.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yes, yes. In the mood
In
for
the Mood
love.
for Love. Have you seen In the Mood for Love?
Yes, I have
Uh,
seen it because I had to watch it for film, like for film class, basically these past
oh,
3 months.
really?
Yes,
What was it?
we did like a bunch of Japanese directors and stuff. We had like a couple of movies to watch every week. Hence why I
Uh,
also didn't watch that many movies at that point because I already had like a. Finally watched Seven Samurai. That movie is
oh, wow,
long.
okay.
It's really good, and
Yeah,
I
it's
understand.
3 hours, 3.5
Yeah,
hours, yeah.
I get all the
Mm,
qualities. It's just
mm,
so fucking long.
mm.
It's so
Yeah,
fucking long. It
yeah.
feels like you could squeeze it and take out a lot of stuff and it'd still be good.
I watched it in two parts when I first watched it. I
Yeah,
watched it in
yeah,
two
that
parts.
was.
But Kar Hwai
Hmm,
Wong, who did, he's from Hong Kong. He's not
hmm.
Japanese. What are you talking
No, we did
about?
international movies. So we did the
International film.
Japanese
Sorry.
and we did Hong Kong. And
That's another film.
yeah.
That's a film where like looks and the gaze is very very integral to that whole sort of
Hmm,
relationship
hmm,
in that film, and it's it's just like about two very lonely individuals who are slowly discovering that both their spouses are having an affair with each other, and then they spark up their relationship.
yeah.
It's I could see people might think it's a bit cold, but it's actually really tender and really sweet. I really like In the Mood for Love. That's also part of a loosely connected trilogy, which I love. I love that stuff.
Oh, I didn't know
Although it's
that.
like they're really
Yeah.
it's like characters carry over from each film, but it's
Oh,
like
yeah.
really loosely
Very
connected. Like
loosely
you really
connected.
don't
Yeah.
need to watch
So kind of
like Days
like
of Being Wild and
same
stuff before that. Yeah.
universe, different people kind of thing. Like,
Yeah,
yeah. Okay.
yeah, yeah. I've not seen the last one. I've not seen 2046,
Hmm.
which is the last one in that trilogy, and I don't know how that one goes.
You
But
say it's
yeah.
you say
Also,
it's cold and tender, and
mhm,
I get what you mean because it feels like
mhm.
the world that they inhabit is cold,
Yes.
but
Uh
also
huh.
their relationship ends up like
Mhm.
creating like a nurturing and tender and kind of like
Yeah.
soft. Like
It's uh
I
huh.
really love how they use like lighting and cinematography throughout the
It's a
movie
very
to
uh
create
huh.
like this,
Uh,
like it feels dreamlike, but like the kind of
mhm,
dream where like you just, you're wrapped up in that warm blanket and
mhm.
it just makes you feel
Yeah.
safe and warm. Like it makes
Mhm.
those really like
Yeah.
Sorry, it's a pretty movie.
Also,
It's a
like
pretty
every
movie.
shot's like got a frame in it. Like it's
Yeah.
very deliberate, where it's like
Mm,
they're being framed and kind of watched upon. Like they can't have to be secret about the whole thing because everyone's a
mm,
gossip. Anyway,
mm.
there's that whole thing. Last year's Decision to Leave, which I labeled as the most romantic
Yes,
film
yes.
of 2022.
Mm.
Park Chan Wook's. Obviously, I've already
You've
gushed about
talked
him
about
as
this,
one of the
yeah,
best
a lot.
Korean filmmakers ever.
Yeah,
But yeah, Decision to Leave last year it's like a noir, but also very romantic. It's
yeah.
really strange and kind of uncanny,
See,
that sort of
okay,
relationship between
I
subject and the detective.
I
Is
wanted
is
to
great.
ask you about
Hmm.
this one because we were
Hmm.
talking before we started recording about
Yeah.
Vertigo and how you don't think
Yes.
Vertigo is really a romantic movie because it's like a
No.
very, very
Uh huh.
like weird and creepy kind of romance. When
Yeah.
you described Decision to Live for me, like
It's
it
very Vertigo
sounded,
inspired, but.
yeah, it sounded a
Hmm.
lot
Hmm.
like the plot of Vertigo. So like, what does this
Yes.
movie do different
Hmm.
that makes you feel like
I
this
feel
is
like with.
definitely a romantic movie?
Hmm. The things with Vertigo, like I say, it's not very romantic. I
Hmm.
think it's just to do with. I mean, like I said to you,
Has the
Vertigo's strange.
aestheticism
Where
of
what?
romantic. It has the aestheticism of romantic.
Yes,
Like it
it's
has.
aesthetically romantic, but what's
Yes.
going on here
Hmm.
is you're watching a man become obsessed and then
Hmm.
becoming disturbingly obsessed that he wants to
Hmm.
recreate a woman who he believes has died, and that
Yes. Yes.
becomes quite creepy. But it also then becomes about proving
Hmm. Hmm,
that
hmm.
that person didn't die and it was all
Yeah, no,
there
but
was the
it's
whole
it's
plot.
definitely a
Blah. Anyway,
Hitchcock film that's
uh
more like
yeah,
about
yeah,
tension and
uh
suspense
uh
and unsettling
uh
things rather than
mm-hmm,
like love. I get that. I get that.
mm-hmm.
But like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
what does Decision to Leave do
But
different than
Decision to
that
Leave,
stuff? Yeah.
there's I think there's just something about it that's just
Hmm.
there was more the relationship between the two leads. There's something about it that is just it feels more, I guess, realistic in a
Hmm.
sense,
Hmm.
but also although yeah, like I don't really want to spoil the film.
Hmm.
Although they are morally wrong,
Hmm.
there is this whole desire to be with each other, and I think it's maybe that it's things with Vertigo is that those two characters do get to be together for some time, and I
Yeah.
guess it's that longing in Decision to Leave
Hmm.
that, and
Hmm.
they're always at arm's distance, and there's always
Hmm.
this want to be with each other, but they know it can't
Hmm.
happen,
Hmm.
and
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
wrong. That makes it more romantic than something like Vertigo, where it's like the
Yeah.
two do actually get involved, and then it becomes a very
So it's more of a
abstract thing, and it
knightly
takes it
love
all.
kind of
Uh
thing,
huh.
like the old
Yeah.
medieval
Yeah.
style of like
Uh huh.
longing for, but
Uh
knowing
huh.
that is a thing that wasn't would never be meant to be
Uh
kind of
huh.
thing, rather
Yeah. Yeah.
than the whole shaping your partner to look like someone who
Yes,
died.
exactly. Like
Yes.
that deals with whole like Lacanian theory
Mm.
and things like that, where yeah, Vertigo becomes really hardcore about obsession in a
Oh
man
yeah. Oh
who's
yeah.
like on the fritz. It's more disturbing in that
Yeah,
sense.
because
But
they
look, I
have
love Vertigo. It's
that.
one of my favorite films ever.
Yeah, they have that one scene in the
Yeah.
redwoods, which like
Hmm.
is famous like for being shown in other movies as like a romantic moment. I remember, I
Hmm.
don't know what film, but I remember watching
Uh-huh.
films as a kid and like on TV and seeing people watch that specific scene on a TV screen
Hmm.
within that film as if it was a romantic moment, which is weird to me
Yes.
having seen Vertigo. Uh,
Yeah.
you know, because
Vertigo's a strange one to sort of truly define, I think.
yeah, yeah.
But
So
yeah,
yeah, okay, I get that.
I was just those are just some like
Yes.
other worldly picks I was just choosing.
This is
But yeah,
great.
once
Kyle
again,
isn't
I'm
here.
go.
We're just going on fucking
Uh-huh.
tangents on the honorable mention.
um,
Yeah.
but like I was saying with More Adventures, in
Hmm.
the '60s, they have the Billy Wilder's The Apartment, which is a
Hmm.
fantastic
Hmm.
comedy and romantic picture.
Yeah.
Charade, which I mentioned before in the show as well, which is a great little adventure with Cary Grant and Audrey Hepburn. I
Hmm.
love that film. But yeah, I'm going 1940s. I'm going way back because the 30s and 40s were just like every film was basically a goddamn romance film.
Yeah.
It happened one night is one of like there's only three films in the history
Yeah.
of the Academy which had won the big five is what they call it. So
Hmm.
film, director, actor, actress, and a screenplay.
Hmm.
Oscar. It happened one night, 1934 is one of those films. It's fantastic, great little road movie and comedy as well as a romance. But I'm going 1946, and I'm going A Matter of Life and Death.
Ooh.
So that's. Have you seen it, A Matter of Life
I
and Death?
have not. I've heard about this movie a
Oh,
lot, but I
yes.
haven't seen it.
Really, really important
Hmm.
and sort of influential
Yeah, yeah,
as well.
because
So it's written directed.
it's very much one of those like film history movies, you know?
Yeah. But it's brilliant. I'll tell you why. So it's written and directed by Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger, whose filmography together is just brilliant. And then even when they did their solo careers, I think Michael Powell went and made Peeping Tom, which is one of the most influential horror movies ever made. So even by themselves, they're fantastic. But yeah, Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger, who also did like The Red Shoes, which is another really romantic sort of ballet musical, beautiful, gorgeous film. But yeah, A Matter of Life and Death. So you have Peter Carver, who's played by David Niven. He's this British wartime aviator, and meets the love of his life, June, Kim Hunter, who's played by Kim Hunter, over the radio, pretty much minutes before his plane's about to crash. You know, very much, if you've seen Captain America...
The end of Captain America, yes.
The end of Captain America, but that's actually when they first meet is over the radio, and he's about to die, right? So he's about to die. However, the plane crashes, and he wakes up on the beach without a scratch on him. He lands on the beach in England, and he's just like, okay, I'm alive. And he meets June, and he's like, wait, I'm alive, it's a miracle, woohoo. But somehow he has evaded death, and it's all due to an administration error in heaven. So the angels have messed up here and taken the wrong person, right? And then soon... a bunch of angels come down to Earth and basically tell him that, mate, you got to go. You're dead. You're meant to be dead. You got to go to heaven. And he goes, that's not my. It's like, that's not my fault. That's your error. You messed up. I'm not dying. I've fallen in love, and I'm not going to heaven. And then there's basically all leads to this climactic court case in heaven, in which Peter has to plead his case as why he
should stay alive.
Why should say? And look, it has that iconic imagery of the Stairway to Heaven, which was
parodied in Greece.
Soul.
We talked about
parodied in Greece. Disney Pixar's Soul pretty much ripped it off.
100%.
Like, exactly how
it has some really fun, surreal imagery as well when it portrays like heaven and stuff like that. Like it's very iconic, and you have seen like shit like that used in later movies. Like there's a lot of stuff that happened in this movie, imagery-wise, that was taken and ripped straight from, like, we've talked about it, like Captain America. We've seen it like in the School Dropouts song in Greece. You have it in Soul is basically just this movie, but worse.
Hey, I like Soul. I do like Soul, but that's literally taken from this film. But look, the romance. What the main thing? Okay, you have all this crazy creative stuff going on, and the whole point of the film is for not only do we have to believe this romance, or should I say, they have to believe this romance. We need to believe it, so therefore make sure the case is like solid. Because if we didn't believe in the romance, they'd be like, just kill him, just take him to heaven. But it's one of these. It's like a classic, really British. It was post-war film where it's very very posh, almost like the alien comedy sort of stuff. Really posh, very formal. Sort of the way the characters are performed and the way they deliver their dialogues. Very it's very a generation. People don't talk like that ever. And
they didn't even talk like that at the time. It's like the whole Atlantic accent kind of thing. Yeah, it's one of the funnest things I've found is to just go on YouTube and watch like the outtakes of movies of this period, because you watch them like completely change their accent whenever they fuck up, and it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah. But look, what another aspect of this I really love is that how the friends get involved, right? So there's these people who support them, and it's just like the fact that I love that whole stuff where the friends are like so involved in the sense that like, no, we want to get involved and prove to these people that this is this romance is legit, and we're like going to these efforts to make sure Peter stays alive.
Yeah, he gets to live.
Actually, one of the friend, and it's also very fun. It's very cute and very charming, and it's all just to do with not just the performances and just the setting itself and the whole sort of situation. It's all played, for laughs, and it's not taken super seriously. But when the drama needs to happen, it really does hit, and when it does take itself seriously, it's really well done. But one of the friends, I won't spoil it here, does actually die, right, in the process of helping Peter stay alive. And then he meets him in heaven, and he's just like, I'm chill with dying as long as you guys get to me together. And helps pleads.
That's some supportive friend right
there. Pleads their case and becomes, I think, he's their lawyer in heaven.
Oh, that is amazing.
They get a lawyer, and it's their friend.
I need to watch this
I just love
now.
that. He's like, it's like, you just died, and he's like, I'm okay with that. I'm going to plead your case, and you can be alive. life. It's fantastic. It's
Oh, that's
it's great.
hilarious.
And
Oh, that's
also it has to go
hilarious.
through that whole process where I
Mm,
guess it has to do the whole thing where he's telling them like what's happening, and it's like these angels are going to come get me, and
mm.
everyone's like, oh, it must be crazy and stuff like that. But even that's actually, it's not like dragged out. It's done with a good sense of humor, and it's
Oh
just
shit,
it's a
Richard
really
Attenborough is in this
delightful
movie.
film.
I didn't
Yeah,
know
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that.
it's
Sorry.
it's got
It's got a
it's a
really good
fantastic
cast. It's
cast.
got a really good cast.
Mm.
Yeah.
But like literally, I mean, Pearl and Pressburger are just like
Hmm.
they've made like three of my favorite films ever: with Black Narcissus, The Red Shoes, and A Matter of Life and Death. It's beautiful. It's fantastic. Go watch it.
Oh man, that's a good
Mm.
pick. That's a good pick.
Mm.
Yeah.
And you
So.
realize when you watch it, what's you're like, oh yeah, that's taken from that, and it's
Oh
like
yeah, yeah.
it's very inspiring.
It honestly happens a lot whenever you watch old movies. You realize how much of like your like the visual language of film is inherently
Mm-hmm.
just borrowing from all the masterpieces.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah, yeah.
in The Mood for Love was a movie that I watched after watching Everything Everywhere All at Once, and my favorite
Mm.
scene
Yeah,
from
yeah,
that
yeah.
movie is basically just like a
Yeah,
homage
taken from that
parody
film. Yeah,
from that
yeah,
film. Yeah, yeah, pretty much. So yeah,
yeah.
but
Oh,
yeah.
is that
Um,
got visitor in your shot?
But yeah, no, it's quite nice. I might have to give this one a watch as well because I really do like that era of movies and stuff.
Mhm.
I'm a big fan of like old classics. Loves Myself Singing in the Rain. I even had like freaking Casablanca written down as one of the options for today.
Casablanca is obviously a classic. Yeah.
Such a classic. Thing about Casablanca that I didn't even
Hmm.
realize when I first watched it, because I was a little baby who didn't know shit about history. Like
Hmm.
that movie was very much crucial and influential in like getting like public support for the US to get into the Second World War. Like that was
Really?
yeah,
Wow.
like historically speaking,
Yeah.
like okay, so like how the like basically the US entered after Pearl Harbor, but
Yes.
like it entered immediately right after Pearl Harbor. And
Hmm.
like if you take it like that, you're like, yeah, the government saw they were attacked, they needed to retaliate and stuff. But there
Hmm.
had been like a growing sentiment within the American
Hmm.
public to join the war, which is why
Yeah.
it was so easy for the government to join the war effort and for everyone in the States to go like get behind it and stuff. And
Hmm.
it's because of movies, specifically Casablanca is quoted as being one of those big pushers because it is. I mean, politically it was very much written to be this. It
Hmm.
is a movie
Yeah.
about an American who doesn't really
Yeah.
care about the war and it's kind of at the
Yep.
fringes. And it
Hmm.
ends with him realizing that he must sacrifice himself in order to like do the right thing and join this
Hmm.
battle that isn't
Yeah.
his but really does have to like have a lot to do with his values and stuff. Ends up with him literally like being buddies with a French general, place that was under
Yes. Yes.
Nazi
Yeah.
occupation at the time.
Uh-huh.
Like this
Yeah.
is the beginning of a long friendship. Has a
Uh-huh.
whole
Yeah.
new meaning when you think about wartime propaganda. But the whole idea of like, yeah,
Yeah.
we the
I've never
Janks are
really,
fighting with the
although
U.S. Yeah, with the
it
Europe.
was
Yeah,
obviously made in like 1940,
yeah,
and I've seen it like twice, and I've just never really looked at it in that lens
right.
as
Because
a propaganda piece.
yeah, and I hadn't either. It was one of my recent teachers. She pointed it out and talked about like how there's been like a lot of literature about the fact that yeah, like it was like a lot of the people involved in this movie
Mm.
wanted to make it so, and that's why also the studio didn't have much. Like they didn't really think much of it. They put a
Oh, really? Yeah.
pretty B movie director kind of on it. They didn't really have any high
Hmm.
hopes for it, and it became this amazing thing. It also borrows a lot of visuals from like film
Yeah.
noir and stuff,
That
and it's
also just
fantastic.
shows that like
Yeah,
so many studio heads and
oh,
people
they
in
don't know
charge and
shit.
people in power, they
They
have
don't
no
know
idea
shit.
what's gonna work. They have no idea.
They don't
And
know
when some, they're
shit.
just
No.
like, okay, imagine that. Imagine releasing a B movie,
Yeah,
and then just being like, I guess it's one of the greatest films ever made.
yeah, one
Like,
of the
and they're just
most
like
famous
sitting there,
movies of all time.
okay,
A film where I
it's like
say
what?
Casablanca,
Mm.
people
Yeah.
who haven't seen this film or even
Uh-huh.
like know any quotes from this film,
Hmm.
like related more towards a film than an
Mhm.
actual
Yeah.
geographical location.
Yeah.
That's how fucking
It's like
influential this movie
it's
is.
like how The Lion King was also like the B project for Disney, or
Yes.
Shrek was the B project
Yeah,
for
yeah.
DreamWorks, and then those are the ones that just, you can never
It
really tell
really
these
goes to
things. But
show studio heads
yes,
know nothing.
but what is your final pick? We
Yes.
should
So my
get to
final
that.
pick,
Yes.
I'm an animation guy. Let's talk about
Yep. You're
Wally.
picking anime
Let's
film.
talk about the
Wally. Okay.
greatest love story of all time between a little metal box and a little iPhone. Uh, Wally. So, yeah, this movie has a thing. We started the show talking about nonverbal communication, about how chemistry is not in like the words, but like
Mhm.
the way they are saying those looks, those
Yeah.
actions, those things. So imagine taking a cube and an oval and making it cry because of their love that they have together. This is
Yeah.
basically what this movie does. It's like the
Mhm.
lowest form of anthropomorphism. It literally puts a couple of eyes on a cube and a couple of eyes on an
Yeah.
oval.
Hey, so little sounds as well. Little
Yeah, little
sounds
sounds, and it
helps.
tells you they're gonna fall in love, and you're like, "Fuck
Mhm.
yeah, let's go!" All throughout the movie, while telling you a
Yeah.
brilliant story about,
Mhm.
human powered climate change and how it's
Yep.
literally up to us to do shit about it, and
Mhm.
we need to get out of our chairs and actually start, you know, uh,
Yeah.
changing the world and shit like that. It's
Change the world.
fantastic.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. It does what I think animation does best, and it's a thing that I wish more live action filmmakers thought about, and it's the idea of telling stories just through visuals, like really, really forcing yourself
Mhm.
to like not have to have dialogue, not to like you do see it in some brilliant filmmakers, but it's a thing that I feel like
Mhm.
maybe isn't taught as much to young filmmakers. Maybe
Mhm.
like the idea of working from a script makes
Mhm.
it so that a lot of people just automatically go for dialogue as a way of storytelling.
Yeah.
And don't
Yeah.
get me wrong, dialogue is fucking amazing. We've talked about the Before trilogy. They use dialogue
Yes.
brilliantly.
All dialogue
One
can
of
be.
my
Yeah.
favorite directors are the Coen brothers and Tarantino, famous for their amazing dialogue. But
Mhm.
uh, not like being restricted to the amount of explanations and words that you can
Mhm.
give. It just really makes it so that you can really communicate experiences through such a raw and like relatable way. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
imagine if you could just fucking put a film on and not have to translate it to understand what's going on. That's
Mhm.
how a lot of animation movies are made, just from
Yeah.
inherently the animation process. You
And
go
then dialogue comes second.
yeah, you go like
Yeah.
you work from storyboards, and those
Mhm.
storyboards have little subtitles, but the movie has to work without you stopping and reading those subtitles, because
Mhm.
before the voice actors even get involved, it's just images. So it really forces one to like stop and think, is this the best visual manner of showing this specific emotion, this specific idea? How do I relate these two cuts in order to create a new idea? It really forces you into the language of visual filmmaking. And I think Wally is
Yeah.
a brilliant example of this because the
Mhm.
first bit of the movie is basically mute. You're basically
Yes.
hearing a bunch of environmental storytelling. They do use like narration and like some science and
Mhm.
stuff to like give you the lore dump of the world, but it's in a way where like that's not really what you're paying attention to. You're following this person, isn't a person, it's a robot, but like you're following this
Yes.
this character basically through their daily routine and understanding who they are, and all of
Mhm.
that is done without a single word from that character. Like you,
It's great. It's a great way. The first 10 minutes or so, Wally's a
yeah,
great way of like confounding loneliness of this little robot. He's
yes,
just like, this is his daily routine. There is literally no other specimen except a little insect, isn't there? A little insect friend.
little, yeah, he's got a little cockroach, which is a joke about
Yeah, he
how
got a
like
little
people say
cockroach
that
friend, and then
cockroach
he does
can,
his daily routine.
yeah.
Watches what's the name of the musical
Hello
again? You
Dolly.
know the musical.
Yes.
Hello Dolly.
See,
Thank
I
you.
know
Hello Dolly, or something like that.
that. Actors'
Yeah,
names no, but I know
yeah,
Hello Dolly.
yeah. Goes in and watches Hello Dolly, and then that's his routine.
Yeah,
And
and you
yeah,
feel
routine's a
his
great. Routine is like
such a good
a
way of
thing
showing
that
who a character
it's such
is.
a good way of like visual storytelling
Yes,
for
no,
characters and
100%.
telling them that
It's
their
one of
state. Yeah.
the best ways to introduce a character, and especially not
Mm-hmm.
just to tell us who they are, but like tell
Mm-hmm.
us like like how they respond to their reality and how they
Yeah.
inhabit it. It's a way of like really
It's
bringing you
great.
into their world, you know?
It's a great way of also displaying
Hmm.
insanity and love
Oh
for
no,
horror
yeah,
films is doing it
100%.
routine. Yeah.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
100%. American Psycho uses routine really well at the start to introduce you to
Yes.
his main character. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's fantastic. And the love story. Sorry, I got sidetracked just like talking about
Yes.
how amazing this movie is. This,
Hmm.
I think, Oscar-winning movie. I'm pretty sure. I hope
It
so.
was definitely up for plenty,
Definitely
and
up
it
for
probably it
yeah,
definitely won animated film of the year
yeah.
and all that.
Should
Yes.
have should have been like I don't like how they segment animation and other movies in the
Yes.
Oscars, but
Hmm.
yeah, anyways. Point is the love story in this film. It's really, really interesting. You
Hmm.
basically the like the idea of this movie, it's trying to show how like emotion and love and care and those like more human things are the ones that really outlast everything.
Hmm.
From the
Yeah.
introduction, you see that Wally is the only one of the of the cleaning units left on the planet. There's none
Hmm.
other, it's just him. And it's his curiosity, his intuitiveness, his like that spark of humanness that he has in him that
Hmm.
actually makes it so that he survives. So it's a very pro-human movie with
Yeah.
robot
Yeah.
protagonists, where it
Hmm.
basically shows us that like are what we sometimes see as flaws, like emotion and
Hmm.
feelings and stuff like
Hmm.
that, are actually what makes us like not only survive but thrive. It's what
Yeah.
gives us what makes us ourselves, and it's a really good it's
Hmm.
got a really good parallel to the
Yeah.
humans who are basically kind of like pampered cattle at this point.
Hmm.
They're very
Yeah.
much they have a very robotic lifestyle. They
Hmm.
don't emote, they don't think, they kind of just like
Yeah.
go through the motions kind of thing,
Go
but in
through
a
the motions.
very
Yeah.
yeah, but in a very kind of like it's not a dystopian, they're made to work, but the rather the opposite. It's the idea of like they have so much pleasure input kind of thing, or like they're not required to do anything or work in any
Hmm.
way or produce anything or do anything, and it basically stagnates them. It's like
Yeah.
the idea of like paradise as hell.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's it's really interesting, and you have those oppositions of like the supposed robotic beings being more human than the human characters,
Yeah.
and them being the spark that turns the humans again.
Hmm.
It's a story
Yeah.
about rebelling
There's
against authority and all that
uh,
stuff. Yeah, sorry.
there is this inherent
Hmm.
innocence and purity to the idea and the character of Wally that
Hmm.
also shows that if we just have this whole idea of like purity, and if we
Hmm.
just chase the thing and the person we love,
Yeah.
that and it can actually cause a greater inspiration
Yes. Yes.
around you,
Yes.
and actually, because systemically, like all Wally's doing is like he's chasing after Eve,
That's
and
all. Yeah.
in doing so inspires the human race
Hmm.
to change their ways and go back and save the earth. And that's it. It's that purity and innocence of Wally
Yes.
that it's all about love, and that, and the feeling of love can actually make us do greater
Great things.
things, and
Yeah.
great things.
And
Yeah.
it's one of the few movies where the MacGuffin is a
Hmm.
metaphor for the message of the movie, because the MacGuffin
Yeah.
in this movie is a plant. And
Yes.
the idea of the plant at the end, it's planted and it grows onto a tree. It's this
Hmm.
idea of love as like something that causes a cascade of great things. It flourishes
Hmm.
once you plant
Yeah.
that little seed of love, which is the only reason that Wally goes into this
Hmm.
adventure. He falls in love with this fancy robot that comes to analyze things, and the only
Hmm.
reason that like he goes on this journey and ends up changing the world, it's just because he wants to be with this robot that he's fallen in love with. It has nothing to do
Yeah.
with him wanting to save humanity or bring back plants or anything like that. He's just in
No, he
love.
doesn't really know about it.
He doesn't
Yeah.
care. He just loves someone and he's looking for the person that he fell in love with. And
Yeah.
through this journey, we basically like the whole idea of the plant that you like you plant it, you seed it, then it grows and it flourishes into this whole world. Like the credits, you see them under this giant tree, and then as the
Hmm.
credits go down, you see the boot at the end of the roots of the tree. And I feel like
Yeah.
this is a very good metaphor for the message of the movie, that little spark of love. Because this whole movie goes into motion because of that feeling
Mhm.
of love. It's that
Yeah.
love that managed to create this amazing world around it. It's
Mhm.
the cascading effect of, hey, one little act of kindness led to a whole
It's
world
all this.
of
Yeah.
kindness for everyone, you know. And it's
Mhm.
a it's very wholesome, it's very beautiful, and it shows like that idea of just like naivete, not as a bad thing but as a good
Yeah.
thing. Like cynicism doesn't win,
No.
naivete does. Like love for
Yep.
the sake of love, we don't care how harsh the world is. If we all decide that something is important, then it will be important, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's amazing.
It's
It's a great fucking film.
what? Yeah, it's a great, it's a great film, and yeah, it's pure and it's innocent and it's just a
Yeah.
brilliant love story. Because I mean, all the well, I guess I did a Matter of Life Death, which is also quite a
Yes.
very pure and innocent love story as
Yes.
well. But we also had those heavier ones too, which was good. But yeah, Wally, great pick. I
Great
guess
stuff.
I kind of overlooked that when I was doing my
Hmm.
10 of the 21st century, but
Yeah.
I'm kind of annoyed now. Anyway,
It's okay. It's okay.
but yeah,
Yeah.
before we move on to the review, what
Hmm.
we're going to do a little quick, your least
Yes.
favorite
Yes.
romantic
Yes.
film. What was that? What is that?
Okay. So for me, one of the ones, because like I've seen terrible rom-coms. I've seen
Yes, we
films
all have.
I've seen films that are like completely awful. But even the Adam Sandler ones, most of them are boring in a very fascinating way. It's like looking at a car crash where you can't take your eyes away from it, you know? Like if you have something
Yeah.
like 50 First Dates, which is the fucking creepiest shit in the universe if you think about it for more than 2 seconds,
Uh-huh.
apart from all the racism in it and all that shit. Like,
Yeah, 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 that's true.
holy
Yes.
fuck. But it's also like this is so fucking horrifying that I can't really look away.
Mhm.
You know, I have to stare at this car crash. But then you have a movie like Letters to Juliet. Uh,
Is that the
that's
Amanda
the Amanda
Seyfried
Siegfried
Siegfried
one
one?
where she's in Italy.
I've seen this. I don't know. I saw it like 10 minutes on TV once, but that's about it. I honestly, there
The
was something about
film,
Italy.
oh my God, the filmmaking in
Yeah.
it is fucking horrendous, like absolutely
Okay.
horrendous. But the thing that makes this movie as bad as it is, it's not even the plot. The
Mhm.
plot is bad. It's bad.
Yeah.
But it's the fucking chemistry between the two main characters. You have
Oh
Amanda
no.
Seyfried, and I don't know his name, Mr. Blonde guy, and they seem like they're siblings who grew up together. They have
Oh no.
absolute, like, first of all, they look way too much alike. Like, way too
Uh-huh.
much alike. For a movie about Italy, these people are very blonde and blue-eyed. And then they have such little chemistry that the whole movie is just like
Uh,
watching two bits of like fucking cardboard just like
mhm.
interact.
This is what I don't understand, right? Because I talked about chemistry. We were talking about How I Met Sally, right?
Yeah.
But you have screen tests,
Yeah, you do.
so I don't get it. You
You
have an
do.
opportunity to be like, this actually doesn't work. Why don't we change her or change him,
Yeah, I
and then
get
maybe it'll
okay,
work.
I get
Uh
it.
huh.
It's Amanda Siegfried. I also
Yeah,
I'll
keep her.
keep
She's the
her.
star, right?
Okay, his name is
Change the guy.
Christopher Egan.
Right.
Christopher Egan. I'm sorry. Also, again, like you're doing a movie about this girl who goes to Italy to and
Uh-huh.
like, come on, couldn't she have dated a guy whose like skin tone was a little darker than pale white for starters? Blonde
Yeah.
and blue-eyed guy. I'm sorry. I'm just like I'm not trying to nitpick. I'm
He's
sure
pissed.
they justified within the lore of the movie. I don't remember this movie well enough to tell
Is he
you.
not just like an American tourist or something,
Probably,
or
probably. I don't
an
remember
English
this
tourist or
movie.
something?
I only remember how fucking awkward all the romantic scenes were because I felt like I was creeping in on two siblings forced to play Romeo and Juliet on their school play. And it's
Uh,
just
Wait, it's called
horrifyingly
Letters to
bad.
Juliet. Is she
Yes.
Juliet
No.
or
Okay. So
she's?
the story, which it has sort of potential, it's an interesting
Mhm,
idea. It's this
mhm.
woman who like travels to Italy because she found these letters from a guy to her lover who never reached her. And
Right.
like she finds the old woman who the letters were for and tries to like reunite her with her love. And in the meantime, finds her own little Nazi boy to fall in love with.
Jesus, Nazi
He
boy.
does look
Fucking
exactly
hell.
like the guy from Sound of Music. You know
Oh my
Yeah, he
god.
looks
Okay.
exactly
Yeah.
like that guy. He looks exactly like that guy. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. It
Yeah.
had potential if you think about it.
Uh,
The idea of like these two young kids working
mhm.
together. Kids, I say. I mean, they're fucking in the 30s or something. But these two young people working together to reunite these two older people into a loving relationship and finding love through it. Like it has potential. It didn't
Yeah.
have to
Absolutely.
be the most soulless story that I've ever witnessed. But goddamn, was that movie
Yeah.
horrifying. Italy looks great. We see the
Hard to get go
Tuscan
wrong with that.
landscape. It's pretty.
Mhm.
It's lovely. Love the buildings. Love the architecture. Trees are great. Uh,
But just hate everything around it.
yeah, it's just the actual architecture feels like it's more alive than the characters, and that's not because the
Wow.
architecture feels alive. So yeah, it's really bad. It's really bad.
Okay. Okay.
If you want
I got
to
you.
torture someone, I recommend
Letters to
making
Juliet.
letters to Juliet.
Well, to
Yes,
make this a truly terrible torturous double bill, I'll give
yes,
you mine, right?
yes.
And it's the Daniel Radcliffe starring, as well as Zoe Casa and Megan Park, and I hate to throw you under the bus, man, but Adam Driver. I will say
She's good in this.
Adam Driver's the best part of the film. He's in it. He's not in it a lot, right?
No,
But
but when he
when he's in it, the screen does light up, right?
yes, I just
I'm actually kind of shocked to see the Metacritic score. It's got 59, which I'm
that
like,
is
really?
surprisingly
Anyway,
positive.
surprisingly high, right? So,
Yeah.
so you have Daniel Radcliffe is the guy's Wallace, who's like he's an ex medical student. He dropped out and he's had a bunch of failed relationships, and then he forms this relationship with Chantry, but she lives with her longtime boyfriend, and they're together. So, and he's obsessed with her, and he's like, oh no, she's got a boyfriend. Whatever will I do? Okay.
Yes.
That's your premise of the film. Guy
Yes.
wants girl, girls in a relationship. Oh, can't happen. Also, the film has this massive identity crisis of what it's doing stylistically.
Yes.
Randomly points, occasionally just has like weird, like she likes illustrations and drawings,
Mhm.
and then some occasionally her drawings will come to life and like her butterfly will just like
Mhm.
fly over the screen. It's not like animated like in the sense that
No,
these
but
are
like
like her drawings come to life or anything, but they're just kind of like cutting about.
yeah,
Okay, it's
this
trying to be
is
like this weird indie film, and it's
this
just
is
like,
what
oh,
made
piss
me
off.
watch this
Uh-huh.
movie in the first place because I watched the trailer and it had interesting
Uh-huh.
visuals like that, and I was like, oh, this
Uh-huh.
is gonna be an interesting
It's a
lie.
lie. It's a
But
lie,
it's a lie.
Gonzalo. It's
It's
not.
like it
It's a lie.
happens
It's a
like
lie.
once or twice during the film, and then
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like,
yeah,
why? If you're going for that style, you gotta
just
make
go
it. You gotta
hard.
make it more apparent or
Yeah,
go harder. Like putting in like twice in the space of like 100 minutes just makes you forget, and it's like
it's
it's
the
just
same
stupid and
feeling I
dumb.
had
Uh
with
huh.
like the Marvel TV show, the Miss Marvel one, because like episode
Yeah.
one, it uses like graffiti and shit to like have words appear through the
Okay.
screen and stuff, and it's really like
Yeah.
stylistically interesting. And then it just drops it from like midpoint in episode two, and it never comes back again. It's like, what? Why? What?
What was
How?
the point?
Why?
Someone
It
got
was
lazy.
awesome. Could you just like not do that? Yeah,
But yeah, the film itself is just rather dull and it's just
yeah.
like whatever. It's just a whatever rom-com. But then
It
Gonzalo,
takes place in Britain,
the
doesn't it?
no, I think it's America.
It's
I think
American
it's
because
America.
it feels
Yeah,
like
but Daniel
Britain.
Radcliffe's is
Because
English, but
okay,
that's
because it
alright.
feels like
But like,
Britain for some reason. Because I think it's like overcast
there's
for
a
the whole
points
fucking
they
film
go
or something.
to.
Yeah,
At points they go to like I think it's somewhere in Ireland. I can't
mm,
even
mm.
remember. I don't care.
It's so
Anyway,
bad. It's so bad.
the whole film is just like okay,
Yeah,
whatever. I can shrug it off. I don't really care
yeah,
until the very last second because you think the whole point of the film is that
yeah,
I'm going to spoil it. I don't care. I'm going to spoil it. I don't want you to watch it, right?
yeah.
So the whole point of the film is that like with Decision to Leave, which didn't write, is they know they can't be together.
Yes.
They know it won't work because she's decided to stay with her boyfriend.
Yeah.
Okay, they've come to that agreement. He even tells the boyfriend, "Look, I actually have feelings for your girlfriend," and then he reacts. He does the classic dickhead boyfriend thing. I'm going to punch. I'm going to take it
Yes,
physical for no
yes.
reason
She
instead of
gets
having a
punched in the
conversation.
face. Yeah,
Actually, oh, what a shit film. Anyway,
it's so bad. It's so bad.
but anyway, we've all overcome that. We all know our positions. We all
Huh.
know that's going to end.
Is
It's
it the
going to end on a sad
staircase?
note.
Is it the
Right.
staircase?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and then it
Okay.
just
Yeah.
ends
Yeah.
with her cheating on her boyfriend, and it
Yeah.
just cuts to black. Oh, I'm like, okay, you two are fucking brilliant people, aren't you?
Yeah.
Fuck you.
Yeah.
Just, I was just, I hated it. And that's the thing. There's films I dislike. There's films, like I'm just like, whatever, it's not very good. But I usually just like shrug it off and I'm
Yeah.
like, whatever. But when a film makes me angry, angry at the characters and the motivations, that's when it's like, you've done me dirty.
That's
And
the thing.
I've got a vendetta
By the
against
end
you,
of
and I
this
was
film,
pissed.
you think they're both
Uh-huh.
fucking horrible people, and that is an interesting angle if the film
Yeah.
meant to say that. But like, the film is trying to tell you, no, they're great, and this is
Yeah, they're
amazing and
great
super
people.
romantic. But like, it shows you them being absolute shitheads. And like the more
So
they do,
annoying.
the more you hate them. Like they're both such terrible people.
And just watch the Adam Driver scene. You'll
Yes,
only understand.
there's clips of it on YouTube. The best one is where he just sits down, eats nachos, and says, "I just had sex and now I'm eating nachos. This is the best day ever." And screams it. It's great. Adam Driver is awesome. That scene is fantastic.
Yep.
Everything else.
Thank God he got Star Wars after that, and then he became super famous
Yes, yes,
because
he did.
that would have been a sad loss.
Oh
But
man,
yes,
yeah.
that was our romantic picks for the
Yes.
episode, and now
So
it's time for
you
our.
may ask,
Sorry, what
we're
were you saying? What were you
usually so
saying?
positive in
Uh-huh.
this show. Why would we
Mhm.
put two movies that we really hate, rom-coms? Because we know not everyone celebrates Valentine's Day, and we know a lot of
That's true.
people actually really dislike Valentine's Day. So
Hmm.
if you really want to hate on love today, yesterday, because we're yeah, it's fine, good.
Yes,
Uh,
we're a day late.
it's
Yes.
fine. It's fine. If you want to really hate on love this week, then just watch one of these movies and be reminded that it isn't such a great thing sometimes. It just fucking
Yeah.
sucks. So yeah, enjoy those two amazing picks.
Yeah.
And now we'll
But
yeah.
yeah. Sorry. Now, yes, it is time for reviews.
And now, reviews.
So yeah, shifting gears now. So we've got Women Talking, which is written and directed by Sarah Polley.
Yes.
This is up for 2 Academy Awards. I think it's just adapted
Mm.
screenplay and best picture.
Not a love
And I think
story, I reckon.
no, not a love story. We'll get into that. No, absolutely
Yes.
not. So it stars. It's got a really stacked cast here. You got Rooney Mara, Claire
Mm.
Foy, Jessie Buckley, Ben Whishaw, and Frances McDormand, as well as many
Wow.
others. There's these women, this isolated and religious group who and this religious group in America in like 2010. So there's no technology really. There's like very Amish. They're set away in the country, or like the Midwest America somewhere, right? So you've got this group of women who every night almost are attacked, and the men in the community are claiming that these attacks are by ghosts or the
Mm.
devil or just acts of female imagination, is what they say.
Mm.
It's hallucination. It's not real. However, one night an attacker is caught by the children, and as a result, the women are faced with 3 options. So they can either stay and fight the men, they can
Mm.
leave, or they can do nothing and forgive the men, and life carries on as normal. And
Mm.
so they are then decide to give it to a vote. The vote leads to a tie, and then a bunch of the women in the community have to settle down and discuss what will be the option that they will
Mm.
choose. So there you go. That's set up, and you have like so there's sort of like hints of like something like 12 Angry Men, where it's like all
Mm.
kind of set in one location and they have
Yeah.
to come to a conclusion. And it's
Yeah.
funny because last week I was talking about Cabin in the Woods and like premise films and films set in one location, and
Yeah.
how
Yeah. Yeah.
The Whale as well we talked about, and how those two
Mm.
films kind of struggled with their premise and just being
Mm.
one location. It actually kind of became disinteresting at points. But with Women Talking, I mean,
Mm.
it's not all just set in this one barn. Like it gets more expansive and stuff, but it feels very cinematic, and it feels like the
Mm.
dialogue always has purpose. And that's
Mm.
I can see obviously why it's up for adapted screenplay, and I think it's going to win that Oscar, is because it's
Yeah.
absolutely well written, and it is a very dialogue
Because
heavy film, but it's
that's the
one
thing.
where
I reckon that like as a book, this is like a way easier story to tell.
yeah.
Like books really allow you to like go full in into like
Mhm.
a like chapter after chapter of debate with like describing the emotional thoughts of one character versus the other, that like mental battle. It's a
Mhm.
really easy thing. Well, not easy, but like it's a fairly common thing to do in a book.
Mhm.
Whereas like trying to translate that
Uh-huh.
into a
Yeah.
film
Mhm.
and like a very visual kind of thing,
Mhm.
like it was probably quite the undertaking. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it has like we talked with Franz Krantz Mass, which
Hmm,
was one of
hmm,
me and
hmm.
Kyle's favorite films of last year. That film
Yeah.
managed to make a really bland setting, really really
Hmm,
cinematic by just the way it was edited and put together, and these close-ups and going at the right time of who to focus on at what point. And this film as
yeah.
well obviously has to do a lot of close-ups, a lot of the shots are just purely people reacting
Hmm,
to what another person has said, their eye contact, their facial expressions. It's all really well done, but of course it expands out to more of the farm and more little vignettes and little shots and things. But for the most part, it's set in this one location, but it still manages to
yeah.
keep your
Yeah. Yeah.
interest because
Yeah.
of what they're talking about and the parables to sort of real world issues. And that's the thing, it has these really, really timeless issues that it's dealing with. It's, you know, men have all the power and therefore subjugating women to make these sort of rash decisions, or putting them in sort of horrible positions where they have to make such rash decisions because of, you know, the sort of the horrible power dynamics that have been placed between the difference in sexes, and is still very much the case in many places of the world. And in everyday life, really, there's all these sort of misogynistic and
every place
problems.
Places in the world, such as the entire planet.
Yes,
Earth,
in other places, it's much, you know, it's more.
It's much worse. Yeah,
it's much worse. Yeah, things to do. Well, I won't get into that anyway. But like I was saying, every performance, all the cast members, it's so stacked, but everyone is so just everyone nails the role to perfection. And I will say this, Claire Foy, right? So you got Claire Foy here, who was actually, I can't remember if she was Oscar nominated for First Man, but she was excellent in that First Man film where she played Neil Armstrong's wife in that.
I'm not sure,
but I'll say Angela Bassett.
My mum loved her in The Crown. Like,
and obviously everyone loved her. She was really good in those first couple of scenes of The Crown. But I'm going to say Angela Bassett, Stephanie Zhu, Jamie Lee Curtis, Kerry Condon, and Hong Shou don't hold a candle to Claire Foy's performance. Claire Foy's performance. I'm stunned she didn't get an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actor in this. She is, from this film, looking over the films I saw last year and all the Oscar nominees, she is the Best Supporting Actor of the year. There is a scene where she has to give this monologue, and I was like, oh my god. I was genuinely just taken aback by that performance. I was like, wow. That was every aspect of it was so nuanced. The way, like, you might say, like, we talked about The Whale last week, how one character is like one note and is just angry the whole way. Her character is the woman who's the most angry about the situation because a child of hers was attacked, right? A child. And it's she basically says, if I stay, I will be a murderer because I will just kill the men, right? I'm just going to kill them. So she is rage, really. She's the epitome of rage in this film. But it's not one note, and the way that sort of hardened shell begins to crack, and the way underneath the rage is just, she is just so hurt for her daughter's sake, and it's so upsetting and horrible, the situation. And it's just a performance that I was like, wow, I can't believe you aren't Oscar nominated. That is a real shame, because that's a fucking incredible performance.
Honestly, I don't think you're alone, because as soon as I started Googling Claire Foy Oscar, just to see if she was nominated for Last Man, the first suggestion that Google gave was snub. Oscar snub 2023.
There you go. I mean, I just can't believe it. I was just sat there, I couldn't believe it. I was like, that's the best scene by.
It's odd as well, because it was nominated. It was nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay, which means they clearly saw it and they clearly saw its value, and yet they didn't nominate her for
acting.
It's
genuinely, it was genuinely astounding and baffling to me, because she's better than. And we've sung the praises of Hong Shou.
We have.
Even Angela Bassett, we weren't big fans of that film, and Kerry Condon for Banshees of Inisherin. But I was like, I'm sorry, none of them are as good as her. But sorry, that was very, very one note. For the most part, it's still a very, very engaging, and like, it can be a very hard watch too, dealing with all these relevant and brutal issues. But there is an element of hope to it. There is within the sort of, you know, the darkness of the subject matter, and I just, like, I was thoroughly entertained by Women Talking. I can absolutely see why it's up for Best Picture, and it's going to get, mark my words, it's going to get that screenplay Oscar, because the screenplay is airtight, in my opinion. It's very solid. So Women Talking, I think I'm going to give this a solid 8 out of 10. Really enjoyed it. Not really much in terms of criticism. I think it's just that's the level I enjoyed it that much.
That's saying something.
Women Talking. I think it's one of these films where definitely, if I saw it again, there's going to be even more pick up on what they say, because there's so much dialogue. There's like a lot sort of wade through, but I would absolutely recommend. It
feels like one of those that really like sticks with you after you watch it. Honestly, even just for the subject matter, if it manages to communicate it in such a a powerful way as you seem to have experienced, I feel like once I watch this movie,
it's one of these films where I think films can have either multiple effects, obviously, when you watch them, but there's films where you come to the cinema, you're really hyped and you're really excited and you're really affected by something that's hit you. And then over time, that slowly fades. But then there's other films which I like to call like seed films. And I think Tar was, for example, like this for me as a seed film, where it's like, I really liked that. And I gave that an 8 out of 10. And then the more that Tar sat with me, I was like,
the more
wow, that really was actually brilliant. Not even really just like looking into it and anything, just like thinking about the film occasionally, just be like, God, that was really, really good. And I feel like Women Talking is going to has having that effect on me as well.
Yeah, that's something that like it's interesting to me about like the world of film criticism and film reviews and all that stuff. Like the idea is that as soon as someone watches a movie, they have to sit down and write a review about it, talk about what they think about it and stuff. But for me, almost it feels like a lot of films need that sitting time. I remember watching a lot of films that at the moment really impacted me, and I've completely forgotten about. Whereas there are other films that at the time when I watched them, like you say, like I thought they were okay, I liked them and stuff. But the more time passes, the more my like experience is enhanced. The more I like go, like I keep finding myself thinking about the movie and wondering, oh, what is that? What that meant? Is that? I need to see it again. I need to watch it again. You know, like, So like, it's an inherent flaw in like the industry of film criticism, in general. The fact that like you're supposed to be so like, the movie just came out. You need a consensus because after all, like. It's less about the actual film appreciation of it and more like seen in this commodity for like people to be able to access whether something is worth going to see or not. So like it's commoditized to a point where like it really does take away from it. Like a lot of the things you do, for example, where you write year-end reviews, those are really useful because like you've spent a year like thinking about digesting films, thinking about them, and even like in your rankings for last year when you did that like whole list where you have like all those different movies that you think are like your top 20, I think you did of like last year, 22, like a lot of them might only be there because you watched them recently to your writing that review, whereas a lot of the ones that are there, even though like almost a year had passed to that point, are very much like a definite, like, yes, this was a good film. Like things like Top Gun or like, because like that's one that really stuck with you throughout this year.
Yeah, because
like you've kept, you've kept bringing it up. You've kept thinking about it. You still like, it's something that impacted you and stuff. And like, there's films like that in your rating, and it makes me wonder like how many of those films that like, for example, are like you watch more recent to your writing that are still going to be there in like 6 months, are still going to be your top 10. You know,
it's hard.
It's really hard. It's really hard.
There was one more aspect of the film I actually forgot to talk about. Ben Whishaw's character is interesting, right? Because he's the guy who's taking the minutes in the film. And he's the only one and the only male in the meeting, and he's actually someone who left the colony and then got taken, so he got x-rayed and then sort of brought back in, and he went to university and learned more about the world. And there's this whole aspect they sort of get into is that how misogyny and that belief that the male is more powerful and the male deserves right over women is something that is actually something we forget is not just born into a child. It's something that is taught to them. It's something that their parents enforce on them, or they see in the adults around them, and that's how they believe as a boy, as a man. That's how that's how the behavior has to transgress, and that's how they will behave as men, and that they deserve that right and that power. And the way Ben Whishaw is someone who they kind of lean into that with his characters, that there's something with his mother. They don't really tell you much about it, but he left the colony, got a higher education, and then he's in his own, like, rightfully come back in because he wants to teach the children that this isn't the way, and he wants to make an impact on the boys, and he wants to stay to do that. And that's a really interesting aspect of the film that I've not really seen in a lot of film, where it's like, misogyny and
it's a taught
sexism
thing. It's
is
not
something
an inherent thing.
is raised within a child. It's not just like person is evil, person is bad. It's something that is
especially because like
picks up on.
Nowadays, when like we're actually doing studies into like gender and like what it means and like where it comes from and stuff, we're realizing a lot of things that we just assumed recently it came out that someone like a bunch of archaeologists found the remains of a hunter
Mm-hmm.
and realized through analysis that it was a woman, and
Oh, wow.
it's the skeleton, the remains of a
Mm-hmm.
woman. And through that, it's kind of come up that like a lot of female
Mm-hmm.
archaeologists were talking about the fact that in archaeology there was an assumption whenever they found a body with hunting tools around it, they automatically assumed it
Just
was
went, it was
male.
a man.
They just,
Really?
oh, it has
Yeah.
hunting tools, therefore it's a man. And they've gone back on a lot of those discoveries to reanalyze them. And
Yeah.
it turns out it's like what, like 40% of them were female or something like
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah.
something
Mm-hmm.
crazy. So it turns out like a lot of those assumptions, a lot of the things that you're taught about, like, uh, men are hunters, women are gatherers and caretakers, it's bullshit. It's
Yeah.
something that we get taught and we just assume is part of our reality,
Yeah.
but it's not based really on like anything. And that idea of like those ideas that hadn't been questioned a
Mm-hmm.
lot,
Yeah.
like the idea that we're now thinking, hey, maybe there's something to this, where we
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
have to think about it
Oh
before
wow,
we
we've caused
just
really severe systemic problems with
yeah,
this
yeah, it's
ideology.
almost
Yeah, yeah,
like yeah.
yeah.
And
Mm.
I do like the idea of this character specifically because the fact that he feels a responsibility towards this, because there
Mm-hmm.
is very much this whole idea of like like once you like you're like the whole performative woke man kind of deal with like a guy who's like, yeah, no, I don't believe in sexism and stuff, but then like it's really not my problem because I'm one of the good
Mm-hmm.
ones.
I'm the
But
good
like
guy.
this idea of this character who like obviously understands the horribleness of the place where he came from, and
Mm-hmm.
instead of just running away from it, which I would probably do if
Yeah,
I was in his situation. The idea of him coming back to that place and trying to use the little power that he has to change things for the
mm-hmm.
better, like
Yeah.
that idea of like being like, hey, I understand that I have a power, and therefore with certain power comes great
Yeah, exactly,
responsibility.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
It's also
like
even just
that
like it's a
is, yeah.
great. It's also there is sort of that insight into sort of like there's
Hmm,
that how much do teachers have an
hmm,
influence on a child's life as well? It's like
hmm,
is their home life in a certain condition where the teacher actually has to take on more
hmm.
responsibility, even though they aren't a parent, in order to
Yeah, yeah.
make the best out of this child. I just kind of I really
Oh yeah.
liked his character and the way he sort of.
It's really interesting, and
Mhm,
like the whole nature versus nurture thing, like
mhm,
it's a really interesting topic. I've worked as a teacher. I've
mhm,
worked as a teacher for very, very young children, 3 and 4 years old,
mhm.
and I've been in situations where they were having a very hard home life,
Yeah.
and you end up becoming a pseudo parent to
Mhm,
them in some way,
mhm.
because you end up being responsible for like they I mean they're kids, they're human, they have emotions, and sometimes during class they've disrupted for certain reasons, and when you know about like their home life and stuff like that, like it makes it so you react in a different way
Mhm.
when they're being disrupted, because you
Yeah.
understand where that disruption comes from. And like this whole idea of education as like a standardized thing where like it treats everyone as equal,
Yeah.
it also means it's inherently unjust because it not everyone is equal.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
the idea of like putting all like assuming everyone comes into the classroom being the same under the same circumstances
Mhm.
is inherently disadvantaging a lot of those people. And with sexism, there was this amazing experiment done in the UK specifically, where
Mhm.
they grabbed like I think it was 10 6-year-olds, girls and boys, and put them in houses to live for a couple of days on their own. And the girls, well, made a mess, but like they were very loving and caring and stuff, and the boys just completely destroyed absolutely
Yeah.
everything to the point where like they were eating cereal every day, and didn't and they all got taught how to cook, how to clean and everything right before the experiment and stuff, and
Mhm.
like they all behaved like kids, but there was a very blatant difference between the guys breaking
Yeah.
everything that they could and the girls trying to build like a home life. And a
Ah.
lot of people, I remember, reacted to that being like, well, women are inherently better than men
Mhm.
because they are more responsible and stuff. And it's curious to me because they don't realize that those are 6-year-olds that have spent 6 years of their lives within a society that
Mhm.
tells women that they're meant to be caretakers and
Yes. Uh-huh.
responsible for others, and tells men that it's okay, whatever they do doesn't really matter. You know, like, yeah, you just break things, it's fine. That's part of being a man and part of who you
Yeah.
are. So it has nothing to
Sort
do
of
with the
recklessness
inherent
that's part
nature
of
of,
being a
yeah,
boy.
like it's
Yeah.
like men are allowed to be children for longer, you
Yeah.
know?
That's a good way
Yeah.
of putting it. Yeah.
Like the whole stereotype of like the boyfriend who doesn't know how to do his own laundry and whose girlfriend is basically his mom. Like that's a thing because the guy has been allowed to do that, whereas like women are expected to do certain things and
There's
know
sort of
how to
societal
take care of it.
expectations of
Yes,
things. Yeah.
so like it's this idea that like these things are put onto people, and then of course, if you like round up men and women who have inhabited these roles for years and you look at their differences, you're going to find these specific differences. Is it because they're genetically predisposed to be like this? Or is it maybe because they've been taught, told, and expected to behave in a certain way? You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Gonzalo, I
For
really think
me,
you should
the answer
go
is very obvious, but
before we
yes,
do
sorry.
our Oscars results episode of March.
Yeah,
You better go
I should
check out
go
Women
watch this.
Talking. You should go
Yep,
check
yep,
out Women
yeah.
Talking.
It
But
feels like a very interesting film.
but yes, that will wrap up today's episode. We just so that was a review for Women Talking, and thank you, Gonzalo, for joining me.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure. Sorry for all the rants. Wish
No,
Kyle was here
no,
to stop me.
I enjoy it. It's good. You know, we have time when there's no third person, I guess, to do that.
That is true.
But on next week's episode, we're going to be talking about the films that we changed our minds on. Why did we hate or love these films when they first came out, and then why did over time? What changed? What changed in us? What changed in the film? We're going to discuss that
I'm
next
going to be
week.
quoting a specific YouTuber a lot during this
Right.
during this episode. Yes, if you haven't watched them, for Film Joy, he does a lot of like just essays on movies and why they're wonderful, and it's really made me change my mind on a lot of movies I really did not like before that. So highly recommend.
Yeah, there we go. We just gave our opinions of all those romantic films. There was too many to count. I usually list it off. I can't. All those romantic films, the ones we liked and didn't like, as well as Women Talking, but those were our unwanted opinions. Thank you very much.
Happy Valentine's Day, everyone.
Happy late Valentine's Day.